Let's get some football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. Johnny Mac's in the house. We'll get the latest at JF McMullen. Eagles getting ready for the Cowboys. And I guess the bigger story is in terms of this game right now, it happens to be on the Cowboys side, John. What new information do we have? I think Dak Prescott, we all understand, is going to play. But what version of him will we see?
Yeah, and I think it depends on what type of injury he has. The Cowboys are saying, and Dak is saying it's an AC joint issue. And if that's the case, it'll just be a pain tolerance, and it's not that big of a deal. If it's a rotator cuff contusion, that's a bigger deal because there's swelling involved, and some people, Dr. Dave Chadwan, who looked at the video, said it looked like that to him. That's the real injury. And that would make sense because there's swelling in the shoulder, and that's the reason Dak is not throwing at practice. If the latter is true, it's going to be an issue for the Dallas Cowboys. It's going to be a significant issue. And the Eagles are going to pick up on that early in the game. You kind of have to wait and see what Dak Prescott showed up. But I think it's interesting because if you go back to that Rams blowout last week, Zeke Elliott even admitted that Dak had taken the P out of the RPO. In essence, he wasn't running RPOs to throw the football. He was just handing it off. And the Rams, it seemed, were not capable of sensing that in-game. The Eagles are kind of aware it's an option. So you got to kind of see who shows up. He's going to play, but there's a good chance that he's not going to be close to what he typically is, and obviously that would be a huge positive for the Eagles.
Yeah, and you don't think this is, any gamesmanship here. This is Dak really has got an issue here.
No, he's hurt. I mean, you're the starting quarterback in the NFL. You're not taking him off the practice field if he's not hurt, and essentially he's not throwing the football because he's not capable of throwing the football right now. And it's Thursday, and the game's on Sunday. So if they're swelling on Thursday, again, you're going to do everything possible. There's going to be pain injections. Everyone knows Dak is a very tough player. I mean, when we talk about this comparison, a lot of people throw it out there for natural reasons, Dak Prescott versus Carson Wentz. One of the things you could legitimately put in Dak's sort of column as a check mark is his durability as a player versus Carson Wentz. This guy's never hurt, and all of a sudden you show up, never missed a game, you show up week 16 of this game, and Carson Wentz is completely healthy, and Dak Prescott is not. And that's why picking football games is difficult. You never know what's going to happen.
I mean, because that's all this game needs, John, right? I mean, you got Boston Scott and Greg Ward. So you might as well get a Cooper Rush out there to make it even more attractive to the viewer. What do we know about Cooper Rush?
And that's the thing. I mean, Cooper Rush he never plays because he doesn't have to play because Dak always does.
Right.
And all of a sudden, if you show up on Sunday and this guy's got swelling in the shoulder. I remember, during Adrian Peterson's different quarterback, certainly from a talent standpoint and a success standpoint. But, the Vikings beat the Packers in Week 17. It was one of those years where you had to go back-to-back, and they were going to Lambeau Field the next week. It was probably Christian Ponder's best game as a professional, and no one knew it. And he got hurt in the game. And all week it was like, he's going to play, he's going to play, he's going to play. Sunday showed up and Joe Webb had to play. Game over. I'm not saying that's going to happen. Everybody in this building believes Dak Prescott is going to play. He says he's going to play. The Cowboys, Jason Garrett on his conference call yesterday said he was going to play. So I do believe he's going to play. But the question is, how effective is he going to be? And that remains to be seen.
We've killed Howie Roseman a lot this year, John, meaning all of us, and certain moves that didn't work out. But the Cowboys being in this situation and not having a veteran backup, like they did a few years ago when they're in the same situation. The Eagles won the game with Chip Kelly, but Kyle Orton actually played fairly well that day, almost stole one. This, to me, is a little bit of a knock on Cowboys management to go into a year when you have all these pieces and you're expecting to win or at least contend for a Super Bowl, and your backup quarterback is Cooper Rush. I feel like that's, one of the things that's fair to criticize them for.
Oh, no question. And hey, they get plenty of criticism as well. I mean, that front office is the reason. I mean, you look at this team offensively when they are healthy, and number one offense in the NFL, and all the weapons they have, starting with Dak and Ezekiel Elliott, but Amari Cooper and Randall Cobb, Michael Gallup has taken that step forward as a young receiver, at least as a deep threat. Jason Witten's back. I mean, they have playmakers all over the field. You would think that would be the team to get a Josh McCown type or somebody of that nature, that if you needed to win a game, whether it's week 16 or whether it's week 8 or week 5, you would want more of a presence. So I think it's fair to criticize. And I think when you do have a player like Prescott who has been so durable, you kind of take that for granted. And everybody gets hurt in this league eventually, and it's come at a very, very bad time for the Dallas Cowboys, and they're kind of counting on him to fight through it, and probably will, as I said. We'll see how well, and I think that's the key more than anything else. But, yeah, from their standpoint, it would be nice to have a veteran who at least has something on the resume. And after Cooper Rush, it's Clayton Thorson, by the way, on the practice squad.
Oh, boy. What's the reasoning behind, if you can even answer this? It's a tough one. But why has Zeke has had so much success against the Eagles so far in his career? Because the Eagles are typically so good against the run, but with Zeke, not so much.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the one thing, and I've said it all year, the one thing the Eagles have been relatively consistent on is stopping the run on defense. They're third in the league. They've been pretty consistent throughout, not only this season, but in sort of the Jim Schwartz era, except for Ezekiel Elliott. I think part of it is the fact that he's just really, really good, and that's probably the biggest part of it. But the second part of it is there are other parts to this offense, and it's as I just mentioned with all those playmakers, there's a complementary aspect to it that if you do stick 8 in the box and you do sell out, they're going to be able to make plays in the passing game. And so it's difficult to just completely sell out. Some teams have done that, and they paid the price. Because Amari Cooper can beat you, Michael Gallup can beat you, Randall Cobb can beat you. So that's sort of the give and take you have. And Jim called it robbing Peter to pay Paul, and that's what everyone has to make the decision. From the Eagles' standpoint, the fact is you've never beaten the Dallas Cowboys with Ezekiel Elliott in the lineup, so you probably do have to rob Peter and hope Paul isn't looking to get paid. I'm going in there first and foremost to stop Ezekiel Elliott.
So even with that said, and with the news that continues to kind of grow here with Dak and his injured shoulder, I kind of asked you this yesterday too, John, but will they sell out then now with all of that? Early in the game, late in the game, early, and then if they get beat, they change it up, or just sticking to what they've been doing?
Well, I think they almost have to, and this helps them, to be honest. You do sort of come in, I think, with that game plan to begin with, even if Dak Prescott is completely healthy, because that's what's beaten you in the past. And now you see the reports coming out, and the Eagles aren't dumb. They know there's an issue. They know it's not gamesmanship. And if there is gamesmanship, it is about the other aspect of it, that they're acting like Dak isn't as hurt as he really is. So they realize that makes it easier to go in with the mentality you have to stop and run first. And then there's the aspect of Philadelphia. It's really cold today at the NovaCare Complex. Luckily for the Cowboys, it's not going to be this cold on Sunday, but it is going to be high 30s, low 40s, and typically when Dallas plays in that type of weather, that affects them as well, and that would make them lean towards being more of a run-first attack. So I think everything leans that way anyway. So, I mean, that's got to be the Eagles' first thought, is to stop Ezekiel Elliott.
All right, Johnny Max with us, Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget, give him a follow at JF McMullen. A lot of good articles today on this game, on this team, and how important, I was asked today about Wentz and how he's being kind of received here, and I was, for some games not so good, and some games people are like, okay, but to give it a different spin almost is kind of like how important these games are for him in his maturity. Here's a guy who's going to be, 28, 29 years old. He's never played a playoff game, and there's a lot of people like, well, if they make the playoffs, what's it matter? These are the kind of games that do matter for Wentz, right? Like, he's got to keep winning these type of games, get himself to a playoff atmosphere, and just kind of that's the next step in his process, because people take for granted that, all right, he was going to be the MVP in 17, and he's this guy, but he's never played in a playoff game and really hasn't had a lot of games like the ones he's playing in right now.
No, yeah, I agree with that. Either way, this is very, very important for not only Carson Wentz, and that's what I said, for every young player on this team. Anytime you're in this type of environment, and everyone says like a playoff game, it's not a playoff game, but it is an elimination game, so it's very important. And for you to have a chance to go to the playoffs, you have to win this game. So that type of atmosphere is important for any young player, but certainly a quarterback who hasn't been in these types of games before due to injury. I mean, he would have been in that situation in 2017, but didn't get to partake in these types of games. So, and that's why I think it is important for the Eagles to finish up and win these final two games and get to the playoffs, whether it's one and done or whether you win a home playoff game. All that is experience for a quarterback, and as I said, the other young players as well that are going to be playing that have never been in that type of environment. That can only help. It can't hurt. Win, lose, or draw in those types of situations. So this is one hurdle. Hopefully he gets to the second hurdle, and that gets you to the playoffs, and that's another hurdle. But all those situations are helpful for not only young quarterbacks but also young players in general.
Hey, John, if the Cowboys have to run a little bit more because of the Dak Prescott shoulder injury, I imagine T.J. Edwards becomes a more prominent part of the Eagles' defense. What have you seen from T.J. over the last few weeks? He's not talked about a lot, but I think he's started to improve his play.
Yeah, and I think I kind of mentioned that yesterday. I think when you weren't on with us, Jeff, I think it was one of those locked out situations with Camus going on injured reserve. Maybe this is a week you need the bigger, more traditional linebacker because we always talk about Nate Gary and Camus as being, oversized safeties in essence, what they were in college and sort of modern linebackers, whereas T.J. Edwards is more of a natural inside linebacker, 240-pound guy, and the weather's starting to turn and the running game becomes more important. So you sort of luck out and you have that type of player. Now, I don't want to overstate it either. It is an undrafted rookie. It is a guy who doesn't have a ton of playing time. But you could be playing more base than you have been all year if things break the way they could break. So to have that physical presence at linebacker is going to be important for this team because that's not Nate Garrett. So it's going to be Nigel Bradham. It's going to be T.J. Edwards.
So if you're playing more base defense, does that base look give you more opportunities to blitz?
Well, I don't know, and I talk about.
And I'm not asking you as a guy who's a blitzer guy. I'm just saying because one of the reasons I think one of the reasons why people don't blitz as much anymore is you're not playing these classic 4-3s and 3-4s. you don't have as many linebackers on the field, so there's not as many blitzing looks that you can kind of give. The old 3-4, the outside linebacker comes off the edge, the middle linebacker comes up the middle, or the outside linebacker stunts inside. You don't have as many linebackers anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are different ways to blitz, and there are a lot of teams in this league that still blitz a heck of a lot, and certainly from the Eagles' perspective, I think it has more to do with the corners and how they're holding up. And if you look at the Cowboys' receivers, if Dak Prescott is healthy enough to get the ball down the field, I don't like that matchup with Cooper and Gallup on the outside against the Eagles' corners. So I think you have to be very wary of that. And then the second part is I think the Eagles don't have a ton of talent in the back seven as a whole. So I don't think they have good blitzers to begin with, other than Malcolm Jenkins, who I think is pretty effective at times as a blitzer. A lot of teams have good slot corner blitzes. I don't think the Eagles have that guy. Nate Gary has probably been their best blitzer at linebacker. That's not something to brag about. So I don't think Jim has a lot of bullets, to be honest, when it comes to the blitz game. Not that he wants to do it a lot, because I'm not saying he does, but I think you have to factor that into it as well.
Oh, I agree with that.
What do you think the likelihood, John, is? I think Randall Cobb was a college quarterback. Am I wrong about that?
I don't know. I got to be honest with you.
Because I feel like even if Dak's
been around so long.
Yeah, yes. Even if Dak's shoulder is ailing, I feel like, obviously they want to hit the Eagles where it hurts, and using Amari Cooper and Gallup and getting them deep. And we've seen teams already throw gadgets at the Eagles and beat them. So I'm kind of wondering, what are the odds that Kellen and Jason Garrett try to pull something out of their bag there that gets the ball deep into the air, even if Dak's hurt?
He was the all-freshman quarterback at Kentucky for 1 year, and then they moved to wide receiver.
Well, that means he probably wasn't a very good quarterback.
He was on
Kentucky.
He was on the freshman football team.
He threw the ball for 316 yards and 7 touchdowns.
Well, you heard it here first if it happens.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give you credit if that happens. I mean, a lot of people have talked to about the trick plays with the Eagles because they've been so effective. But, I mean, the Eagles are the guy with a college quarterback. I mean, so a lot of people have looked at Greg Ward, who's had tremendous success at Houston. Mm-hmm. And Zach Berman just did a story for The Athletic. I mean, he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He beat Patrick Mahomes as a quarterback.
That's right.
Baker Mayfield as a quarterback. So, in theory, if anybody's got the quarterback to throw the football, it's the Eagles and Greg Ward. They haven't done it yet. They tried to do it in the preseason. Ultimately, this is the type of game where I think they might pull something out in that aspect. But I think it's fair to say, because of the Eagles' lack of success defending trick plays, and a lot of that has discipline issues, that you might see it at some point from Dallas. But from both sides, I mean, that's like one play in a football game. That's generally not going to decide the football game.
No, but in a close game, sometimes those things stand out. Yeah. Miami.
And it definitely, exactly. And and I get why people keep asking about it, because it's happened so much to the Eagles. And, hopefully Jim has stressed that discipline, because I think that's been the problem. Even when it didn't work, the flea flicker, I mean, that was a Josh Sweat great rush that if he didn't get home, that would have worked as well, because I think Marcus Epps bid on that. And that's been the issue with the Eagles. They just have to be more disciplined, and that talks about some of that lack of talent on the back seven again.
John McMullen, tomorrow we'll have his pick for the game, Eagles-Cowboys. More information on the injuries. By the way, the Eagles injury report out today. No Aguilar, no Bennett, no Lane Johnson. Limited Arthego-Whiteside, Brandon Brooks, Fletcher Cox, Ronald Darby, Jordan Howard. Real quick before we let you roll here, Lane Johnson, any better feel, or is it starting to look like probably not?
Well, I would say probably not, and I would even go as far as saying definitely not with Aguilar and Barnett. I would say one of the three is going to try to give it a go. It's Lane, but that's just knowing Lane. And the fact that he generally fights through these types of things. Plus, the second part is, as a veteran player, he doesn't really need much practice. But I would say definitely no on the other two. And Lane still probably leaning towards less than 50-50, but would never surprise me if he's out there.
And then, of course, Jordan Howard. Are we giving up hope there?
Yeah, I have. Guy's not cleared for contact. He's been practicing for 6 weeks in a limited. So that's why you see with Dak Prescott, you say limited. Well, he's practicing. Well, Jordan Howard's been practicing for 6 weeks in a limited fashion, but he's not cleared for contact. So
right.
Limited means nothing in this league.
Johnny Mac, back tomorrow, football at 4 at JF McMullen. And, of course, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Thanks, pal.
All right, thanks, guys.